in good care. We have Dr. Collins Odote. We have also Dr. Habil Olaka and also Dr. Gituro Wanaina. So you know the drill. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook, and 20686 our SMS portal. Right, let's just begin with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers from that particular note. First of all, we can see also Donald Trump is announcing that, yes, we'll come also with economic stimulus package in light of the coronavirus. Is this the same line that, and trajectory that also the Kenya Association of Manufacturers is taking? Kindly just paint a picture for us how it is.
Okay, it's obviously a subject that is evolving and changing. I would say it's a bit like the virus. It's mutating very, very quickly. And the way the dynamics, the business dynamics are changing, businesses just need to be alert, and obviously consumers need to be alert as well. So I think let's separate 2-3 things. Number one, what is the impact of the coronavirus on supply chains and on availability of raw materials, etc., for manufacturers. So what is happening is that the Chinese supplies have started resuming.
Yes.
There have been some delays occasioned by the shutdown, but China is pretty much back into full production now. The only issue is due to the shortage of shipping containers into China, the freight rates have increased. So typically a freight rate for a 20-foot container from China would be about $1,300. That's now increased to $2,200. So input costs will go up slightly. The good news is China's back in full production for raw materials, particularly things that Kenya uses like fabric and steel, iron ore billets. The second area that needs to be looked at is, if China shuts down, where's your alternative supply base? So people have been looking outside and trying to get a plan B into action, because last year it was all about China versus US trade war. This year it's about the coronavirus. So basically, is China now a suitable supply chain destination? So I think people will look at diversifying their supply chains. The third impact is from the Saudi Arabian-led push to increase oil supplies, which has brought the price of oil down. Kenya, being obviously a net importer and with a fuel bill amounting to almost 600 billion shillings annually, this is a good opportunity for Kenya in terms of reduction in input costs on the from the oil. So when we've been buying oil at about $68 a barrel, and it's now fallen to about $35 a barrel.
Yes.
It's a great opportunity for Kenya to capitalize on this, buy some futures, lock in this pricing, because eventually this virus will go, the economy will go back to where it should be, and I feel Kenya as a country should capitalize on this, and we'll get lower fuel costs, lower input costs and things. The only issue on that is the petrochemical industry that is reliant upon this. Some of it, producers like Sasol in South Africa, yes, SABIC and Aramco in Saudi Arabia, which are big input manufacturers, will either shut down and ride through this storm for 3 months and flout long-term agreements with manufacturers. So we may see supply chain pressures on petrochemical-led inputs into the country.
Right, thank you. Let's just rope in also Patrick Obath. You think them really towing the idea of outsourcing some of its production is the way to go in combating the effects of coronavirus?
I think that is a very it's a thought, but I think it's a very low likelihood. Shifting manufacturing very quickly out of a place is a huge decision that any manufacturer has to take. And I mean, even the sort of the portable manufacturing facilities like textiles, which you can shift very quickly. The sheer logistics of shifting is actually very daunting. So I think whilst the thought of that is there, that is more of a long-term contingency plan rather than an immediate plan.
Absolutely.
So I don't see any manufacturing moving out of this country at all. All that will happen is that there are various scenarios that people look at, your supply chain, you look at your internal costs, you look at your export markets, you look at all those kind of stuff, and you begin to sort of weigh what it is that you have to do in order to ride through this tide. And I think what is happening globally, that you're seeing most governments are doing, basically they're putting support measures for their own internal manufacturing capacity so that those industries can survive through this period. So you're looking at the US, where tax breaks are being put in most countries, tax breaks are being put in. And I think that's the one big thing that any government can do is basically to drop in tax breaks for the period that this is happening so that the industries can basically lower their cost base and be able to supply their own countries. But so manufacturing flight, I don't think so.
So that is a long-term plan.
I agree with Patrick.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think we're going to see many people moving production outside. It's very difficult to do. And it's absolutely a long-term and I would say a very unlikely step. I do agree with Patrick that what are the options? I think banks with their risk management practices will start to focus on to what are the risks in place in the hospitality industry and general other industries and what their exposure is. But banks shouldn't pull the rug from what we call a black swan event like coronavirus on companies. The second thing that should come into play is obviously tax breaks is an option or a fiscal stimulus. We know how fiscally constrained we are in this economy at the moment. So that's a tough step to take. However, tax breaks or possibly even a delay in what China's done in terms of just filing your tax returns, just doing it late, and that kind of thing. So there are various measures available.
Oh, okay. So maybe we can also rope in Dr. Gituro and Aina, because when we saw this, we were wondering, okay, now we're actually facing the blowbacks of it, that also the job market is going to be affected, because if they take production or we have a manufacturing flight out of the country, then it means that is also affecting the job market, as it were. But it's good to know that still this is a long-term measure that is in the pipeline.
It's unlikely.
Right. Let's just hear from Dr. Gituro briefly.
Thank you, Frank, for inviting. And I think we agreed last week that you should give us masks. What are the masks?
Oh, masks.
That's what we had agreed.
But how will we hear you?
Nonetheless, I think it's perhaps looking from a different perspective. I think it's an opportunity having this coronavirus. And I think yesterday was an interesting person who was making a comment. It has drastically reduced the travel, particularly per DMs. In one or other.
So in a way, it's affecting the austerity measures the government have been exactly actually to instill.
In a direct way. But I think what is important, perhaps, Patrick, it's how do we cushion ourselves?
Yeah.
I think that's a key word. I have read the report from KM and KEPSA. I think some of the suggestions could be modified. And I think we need to take cue from what the UK did on Tuesday. Something they have never done in history, reducing their interest rates to about 0.25. That's amazing. You know, with 2.5, who can't borrow? The second one is perhaps what Italy did. Italy has suspended any repayment of loans within this period because there's not much activity. So those are the areas I think we should be looking at. How do we cushion ourselves? And I think I like what you're talking about, tax break or fiscal stimulus. We have talked in this forum about the stimulus, economic stimulus. This perhaps is an opportunity. I think there is also to look at the interest rates. I'm worried about the bank, and Patrick is a chair of one of the banks. I think the banks in this country have difficulties bringing the interest down. I don't know how that we can do, but that's where the government comes in terms of it. But also opportunities. Yesterday I was recently to a conference which was to take off in the UK, and now they are using the video conferencing. That's the thing, perhaps we can just Skype. But I think there are more opportunities when you look in terms of this, what is happening. And it's for us to leverage on that. It's an opportunity now to be producing locally. I think that's important. Maybe the flip side of all this, there's no country which has an opportunity, as we talk, advantage the other countries, because it affects everyone.
Yeah.
So it's not just Kenya which is affected, it's everybody in the world which is affected. So in a way that balances us. But yesterday was a very interesting, I think on Tuesday, very interesting news from China that their prime actually visited one province, showing the confidence that it's really come. And I think I like my friend from the KAM, the chairman, that you can see the production is starting coming in from China. But I think it's also an opportunity to be less dependent on one supplier.
Agreed.
Yeah, the way we have so much dependent on China, it should make us start thinking. And I think there's an opportunity to talk to our local manufacturers. When you talk to Babadogo, the textile apparel there, how can we do that? We export to the US, we export to whatever. This is something we can do within this country. So, of course, there are areas, my friend Patrick, I saw him on last week, smiling all the way that the Gulf is taking off. Unfortunately, it hasn't. I hope it's a matter of time. But it really has affected everywhere.
It has an effect. Of course, Patrick was very busy also last week preparing for the Barclays Open as well. But that has been suspended. Sports has been also adversely affected. Right.
But I wanted to say something here. I think we must step back and give government they have done a fantastic job. I think forming that task force, the president talking about it, I think Collins last week was saying we reduce on BBI. I think it's one of the things coming from the reports. I think you, as much as possible, and we are lucky that we haven't had any case here with our connectivity. So it's probably an opportunity to see how we can actually minimize the big groups or large clouds coming together.
Right, thank you. So those are some of the effects, but you've mentioned about also other, I think it is the UK, Italy also has staggered mortgage repayment. I don't know how the banks also in this country are actually prepared in case we just have an outbreak here in the country, how will it also affect people who have borrowed so far? Because I think there will be stand measures as far as working is concerned. This is going to affect the economy. How are we prepared as bankers? Just looking at the financial sector, talking about rates as well.
Thank you, Labal. I think one of the things is the fact that what you can see globally happening is that there have been a number of different policy responses from a number of other jurisdictions, starting with the US, where the Fed moved to reduce the Fed rate to cut it by some margin. You've talked about the Bank of England moving in the same direction, where they are reducing their
right.
You know, their
I'm sorry to butt in. I think I'll try and rectify your mic. We can't hear you, right?
Okay.
I'll just walk over there and see if there is any trouble with that. But in the meantime, let's hear from Dr. Collins.
It's been affected by coronavirus.
It's been affected.
I should move.
We should move from it. You've taken the 1
The
meter
coronavirus
distance, so you're okay.
Right, Collins.
Dibal, I think on the first 3 weeks ago, when this thing happened, we were having the debate between the health implications and the economic implications. And some of us in the show were saying it's going to affect both. Others are saying no. I think 3 weeks later, and I agree with Wainaina, I think government has done a very commendable job, especially on dealing with the health implications. I think CS Mutai could not have come to the ministry at a better time to watch over the last 1 week about the activation of the SMS system, despite the glitch yesterday when somebody tried to use the hotline, it wasn't working. I think that's a small hitch. The fact that it's activated it, I think, is fantastic. Number two, the fact that it's even had meetings with the matatu industry to say what they can do. The fact that last week, Friday, there was an announcement that any meetings of people, international meetings of people around 15 people will not take place. The fact that even yesterday the CS was asking politicians, if you must continue going on with the BBI rally, before you start with the divisive issues, please educate people. I think there's a huge amount of work being done. Having said so, I think the focus of the conversations today is we need to now pay much more attention on the economic implications. We've done a good job on the health implications. We need to realize the economic implications. And both CAM and KEPSA have carried out a study which is showing the business implications. And what I like, especially the KEPSA report, because of the many opportunities that it talks about. So it's not just a danger, it's the opportunities too. I don't think that the sentiments about moving manufacturing out of this country, something we should focus on too much. It's a nice thing to say in the report, just to show a potential danger. I think if you are to move, where are you moving to?
Correct.
Because this is not something that's affecting Kenya and China. This thing is mutating. In fact, now the focus on Italy is much more than even China. So I think what we need to be dealing with much more is responsiveness. How do we take care of both the opportunities? How do we deal with the business impacts? I think there are several things that government could start thinking about. Number one, if you look at the hospitality industry, I think it's hugely hit. Hotels are at almost 10%. If you look at the airline industry, they're hugely hit. What can we do in the short term to ensure that these businesses don't close down? Because when they do, Kenyans suffer. What kind of incentives? So this is the time for thinking about what kind of economic stimulus packages can we put in place for the short term. We have an opportunity in the budget, because this is a time for budgeting. Let's not just put in monies for addressing the health implications. Let's start asking ourselves, how do we cushion our business? Because that's the only way that the good work that CS Mutai is doing will be complemented by stabilizing the economy, which is the other negative impact that this virus is going to cause.